Okay, so now we're gonna focus on the architect, and just for reference, this is a three-part series. Becoming the one, becoming Morpheus, now becoming the architect. And what this is basically, um, the process of spiritual awakening. So the first part we talked about, part one, was the ego deconstruction. The second part, the first part, which ego deconstruction is, which is this part. The second part, which is the spiritual awakening, which had to do with everything over here. And then now what we're focusing on is the ego reconstruction, um, which is right here. Now, this part is focused on the character, the architect from the Matrix. One, I don't want to say one of my pet peeves, but one thing that when I have these conversations and that I hear often is, oh, kill your ego, destroy your ego. You can't have any ego, man. It's like, I understand that, but I feel like that's also wrong. Um, the people who say that, I think, in my belief, what they mean by that is you don't want to be attached to this false value of the first identity or the first ego or whatever. Like, um, you don't want to be too attached into it. You don't want to be too, you know what I mean? But not having an ego doesn't do you any service either, because if you're completely detached, well, then you lose all your purpose, you lose all your focus, you lose all your motivation, you lose all sense of meaning, you lose all sense of everything. You're basically just nothingness. And you can exist in nothingness. You might be existing on the corner of the street. You might be, somewhere out in the fucking forest, existing in nothingness, but you don't have an ego. So you don't want to identify with anything. You don't want to attach yourself to any ideas or anything like that. Um, which is impossible. Which is impossible because when you really break it down in the world, right, you get to this point and you say, bless. When you get to this point where you don't have the ego, you can do a couple things. Damn, that fucking stuffy nose. Uh, yeah, you can do a couple things when you don't have the ego, bro. Ah, um, fuck, I lost my point. Uh, oh yeah. So when the architect, right? You've dissolved your ego, you've transcended your identity or whatever, you're not attached. Now you're this nothingness and you're trying to show people, oh, you're also nothingness, you're also this. This is doesn't exist. This is just an illusion. This isn't real, whatever. Um, that's not good because you have to play the game. You have to exist. You have to what you get to a point where either the nihilism takes over, there's no meaning, you kill yourself, or you figure out a way to play the game and live your true, authentic spiritual self. Those are sort of like the two options. Um, so this is where the architect comes in if you choose the second option, is how can you recreate your ego in a way that is advantageous to your higher self and benefits and move you towards a lifestyle that is in accordance with your higher self. Um, that doesn't make you stoop down on your values. That doesn't make you live in the way that's constantly triggered in the matrix, or that puts you in a state of always being emotionally distressed or uncomfortable, or you want to be in a state of peace. You want to be in a state of calmness and tranquility, and in power, but not power over others, power over yourself, power over your lower self, power over, you know um it just an overall good feeling, a confident feeling. um um you know so that's what the architect is there for, in order to recreate that ego towards that ideal self, that you could be. So when you're, and this is not an aspect I feel like people talk about in this conversation, but when you're sort of creating the ego, you're not creating it from scratch. You're creating it from a deeper level of understanding, a deeper level of awareness. Because, like we said in the other videos, you've already gone through the questions, you've understood the system, you see what's going on, you see it's fucked, you see there's evil, you see there's corruption, you see there's also good, you see there's love, you see there's positivity. You just have a greater awareness and understanding of your situation and your surroundings. So that's what you're recreating from. And you want to create that sacred space for not only yourself, but for those around you as well. You want to create that space so that you can be in your highest, most powerful self. And that, in a sense, then creates a space where people who step into your space are also their highest, authentic, powerful self, that they can be. So when you're doing that, you got to sit down and think about, what does this person do? This is where, like, you have like your ideals, right? Like of like what you want to be, who you want to be, where you want to be, what type of stuff do you want to be doing. Um, and you've recreated that from an authentic space, from your true self. You understood your traumas, your triggers, your motivations, um, that led you in a lifestyle that wasn't authentic to yourself. But now you've dissolved those ideas. You have an empty space to create, from an authentic position, a lifestyle for yourself. And that takes work. That takes work. It all takes work, but this requires a lot of work, a lot of sit down, a lot of reflection, to say, okay, what do I actually really enjoy? What do I actually really like doing? What am I actually good at? What is something that I want to be doing more of? How do I want to genuinely be spending my time? Who do I want to genuinely interact with? What type of people do I want to actually have around me? What type of activities do I actually want to be spending my day doing? What type of food do I want to be eating? What type of um purpose do I want to be pursuing? What type of problems do I want to be solving? How do I want people to perceive me? How do I want to perceive myself? How do I want to be feeling throughout the day? Um, those are questions that take time to answer. Those are questions that take, a while to really figure out, and you're not going to figure it out in 1 second. You have to try certain things, and you have to try different things in order to better understand if you want more or less of that. So let's say, like, right, like, back to our example, the first example that I gave over the last two videos was that, let's say you were born to a Christian family in Kentucky of medical professionals, and all of a sudden you went to Japan to do Japanese farming for a summer or like a year or whatever, and now you have a different understanding of philosophy of life and all this stuff, and you don't fit into that Kentucky style. It's still a part of you, but there's other parts of you now that exist also, and you're trying to find a way to make them coexist. And that's where you can really create something unique. And when I look at the successful people of the world, the very successful people in the world, from what I've seen, are the people who are themselves, the truest version of themselves, and they don't care how they show up in the world. They are just the most authentic version of themselves. So let's take this example, right? You did the Japanese farming for a while, and you just fell in love with that, and you realize, wow, I really just love the way of life that they live over there. But I still also have this part of me, this part of my ego, this part of my identity that resonates with this Kentucky medical you know field of and Christian values. But I also now have this sort of like Japanese Shinto Buddhist um belief value system, and I like how they do their agriculture over there. I like how they have their family structure. I like how they do their education. Back here, I like how um I like our leisure activities. I like the sort of the way the religious the church is set up or something like that, right? You have these two aspects of yourself that are trying to figure out how to coexist. And this is where the architect comes in, because now you are in a place to create an ego that coexist these different parts, because that's just a very basic example of two sort of lifestyles. But let's say you have multiple things that are just clashing with each other, right? That wouldn't normally exist in one, but because you now have this experience, you have the ability to create this singularity of ideas and beliefs and perspectives and everything like that. And only you can bring them about. Um so that's where the architect comes in, because now you can take pieces and create something sort of new for yourself that works with you, that works from a real place for what you want in your life. Um, so let's say maybe, like, just for the sake of that example, let's say now, you like the landscape of where you were at farming in Japan, so you find something like that maybe in the States or in South America that reminds you of that sort of Japanese feeling, where it's like just very green and agriculture and very organic lifestyle. But now you add a little like Christian church or whatever, but maybe the architecture is inspired by Japanese, has Japanese influences, and your way of life has now your way of life is still somewhat in medical professional field, but it's more geared toward like organic herbs or something from the east or something like that. Now you're blending worlds, and that's really what the architect ego is there to do. When you recreate from this space, you're recreating from a space of trying to blend worlds to get something unique that works specifically for you. Where your piece now will fit more perfectly, because in the first example, the first video that I was giving was that when you're first awakening, your piece no longer fits into the glass box, because you're you're stepping away from this glass box of perception that people have of you, because you went to go do this farm thing in Japan, just for the sake of the example. So when you come back, you're yourself. You no longer fit into this piece, into this glass box, because your piece has expanded. So now when you're recreating from the architect, you're creating a world where your piece fits perfectly, because your piece isn't gonna fit anywhere else except for the place that you, except for the world that you are able to create. Um, and that's the challenge. That's the challenge because you have to take on that responsibility. You have to take on that accountability. You have to take on that initiative of creating that world for your piece to fit. And maybe other pieces will fit also that you might not have been aware of. But now, because this world exists that you've created, this sort of one of a kind, unique thing that you manifested out of all these experiences that you have, people might start coming that resonate with that. They say, oh, someone else out there is like that too. I didn't know. And now you've created a community of uh of people like that, you know? And so community is a very, very big aspect um in that ego recreation, because you want to find others who, you want to bring people together, right? Like you want to bring people together. That's really the goal, because those first two parts is in isolation. Like you isolated, right? Like this, the ego deconstruction, you're isolated, your spiritual awakening is still somewhat isolated, but now you're creating a community from a deeper spiritual perspective. And now you are able to tap into that and create this unique thing that people can enjoy and be around, that wouldn't have existed before you. You know what I'm saying? So when you look at people, let's just say for like Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or uh who else? Like let's just say like Bob Marley or someone like that. These people who just had like a very just unique approach to life, right? Because of their experiences, because they bounced worlds, because they were able to take their experiences and compile them and create a whole new thing. And they essentially created a new thing where they could exist, where they could exist in a true sense of themselves, in an authentic sense of themselves, because they couldn't exist any other way. Um, and because of their suffering, because of their isolation, because of that, they were able to create a community of people who maybe held similar beliefs from different uh backgrounds and stuff like that, right? Like let's just say, for example, with Tesla, right? Like with Elon Musk. Um Now there's a sort of central focal point of understanding, in a sense, like, oh, I have a Tesla, oh, he has a Tesla, he has a Tesla, I have a Tesla, we have a somewhat similar, a somewhat similar um thing. Like even if it's fucking small, even if it's just off of the base of the car, that might be the thing that brings two people from very different backgrounds together that wouldn't normally have a sort of understanding. It's like, oh, then it's like a conversation now. It's like, oh, when did you get your Tesla? When did you get, or whatever, you know what I mean? Like it's not, that might be a bad example, but let's say for like music, right? Like music is a big one, films are a big one, right? Like Christopher Nolan, who from his broad experiences and everything like that created an insane level of new worlds, you know, Interstellar, Inception. People who are fans of those films come together from different backgrounds that you might not have anticipated would come together from those backgrounds, right? Like someone from an Indian or Arab or African descent or whatever might really resonate with that film from Christopher Nolan. And now also this person from Florida or from Brazil or something might also resonate deeply with this film from Christopher Nolan. And they have a sense of community now based off of this one central focus that came from Christopher Nolan's unique world that he created for himself to exist in a very authentic way. Um, so I think that's a very powerful thing that should be and needs to be explored more is this idea of ego reconstruction from a truer sense of self. And that's how you get those sort of unique twists, and it's like a cohesive thing. If you do it well and you create this world where your unique piece is able to fit, it's very natural. It's very cohesive. It flows. There's a feng shui. There's a fucking um energy that's just dynamic. It's just, you know what I mean? Like it's just very natural. It's like you were just made specifically for that. Like if you ever watch someone do something so good and it's like he was almost made for that. You know what I mean? Like it's so purpose driven. It's like when you look at someone like a Steve Jobs, right? Or like you look at someone like a Michael Jordan, or you look at someone who's just crazy talented in something. It's like you look at them and it's like they were almost made specifically for that. But it only looks like that because this world that they were created fits their piece perfectly. You understand what I'm saying? So Steve, right, when we look at Steve Jobs, his experiences and his everything and what he was able to create with Apple, obviously with help and everything like that, it fit perfectly for his piece. That world fit perfectly for his piece. So it only worked to that caliber for him. You get what I'm saying? Um, for how he was as a person and what his experiences led him to. When you look at someone like Michael Jordan, that world, how he expressed his true self in basketball, like it was like art, it was poetic, like it just worked so well for him. That was the only place where he felt like his piece was his whole piece was in it. You get what I'm saying? Um and so I think that's a very, very powerful thing. Um and that is the sort of premise of the architect. The premise of the architect is once you've understood the false matrix, you've awakened from it, and then you recreate a real matrix that works for you. Um, I think that's a super powerful thing. I think that's a super powerful thing, and that's what I've tried to do, and that's what I am still continually trying to do. Um, and when I look back on my experiences and stuff like that, it's almost too unique to fit anywhere else. And this might be the case for some of you who are watching this video. It's like you have all of these range of experiences that is just too unique to fit any one thing. And you have all these things, but they don't want on their own, they don't fit into the right thing. And so that's why you need to create the thing that works for you. That identity that's just unique and it allows you to be flexible and in all the things, in all the ways that you can be flexible in your identity. Because otherwise you will have to just compartmentalize, and whenever you compartmentalize parts of your identity, you're never going to feel good because you're never going to be able to show up as your whole identity, if that makes sense. You're always only, when people look at you, they're always only going to see a percentage. They're only going to see a fraction, and you want to be in a space where you can be 100%. You get what I'm saying? You want to create a lifestyle where you can be 100%. So that's really the focus of the architect, man. That's really the focus of the architect. And that's really what I wanted to talk about. But yeah, let me know what you think, comment, subscribe, like, yeah. All right.